History is not just about dates and battles. It is also about the stories of people who witnessed the events themselves. One such person was Antonio Pigafetta, an Italian nobleman who joined Ferdinand Magellan in the first circumnavigation of the world. His journal gives us a window into how Europeans first saw our islands, our leaders, and our culture. Today, we will take you through the Pigafetta's account of Magellan's voyage, from their arrival in the Visayas to the first mass in the Philippines, and finally to the tragic Battle of Mactan.
This book was taken from the chronicles of contemporary voyagers and navigators of 16th century. One of them was Italian nobleman Antonio Pigafetta. Who is Antonio Pigafetta? Antonio Pigafetta, he is the famous Italian traveler born in Vicenza around 1490 and died in the same city in 1534, who is also known by the name of Antonio Loborda or Francisco Antonio Pigafetta. How about Ferdinand Magellan? Okay. Portuguese explorer who organized the Spanish expedition to the East Indies from 1519 to 1522, resulting in the first circumnavigation of the earth. Pigafetta's work instantly became the classic that prominent literary men in the West like William Shakespeare, Michael de Montaigne, and Gian Battista Vico referred to the book in their interpretation of the New World. Pigafetta's travelogue is one of the most important primary sources in the study of pre-colonial Philippines. His account was also a major referent to the events leading to Magellan's arrival in the Philippines, his encounter with the local leaders, his death in the hands of Lapu-Lapu's force in the Battle of Mactan, and the departure that was left in Magellan's flee from the island. Examining the document reveals several insights, not just in the character of the Philippines during the pre-colonial period, but also on how the fresh eyes of the Europeans regard a deeply unfamiliar terrain, environment, and people, also a culture. Locating Pigafetta's account in the context of its writing warrants of familiarity on the dominant frame of mind in the age of exploration which pervaded Europe in the 15th and 16th century. Students of the history need to realize that primary source used in the subsequent written histories depart from the certain perspectives. Thus, Pigafetta's account was also written from the perspective of Pigafetta himself and was a product of context of its production. The first voyagers around the world by Magellan was published after Pigafetta's return to Italy.
For this chapter, we will focus on the chronicles of Antonio Pigafetta as he wrote his first-hand observation and general impression of the Far East, including their experiences in the Visayas. In Pigafetta's account, their fleet reached what he called the Ladrones Islands, or the Islands of the Thieves. He recounted, "These people have no arms, but use sticks, which have a fishbone at the end. They are poor, but ingenious and great thieves, and for the sake of what we call these three islands, the Ladrones Islands." The Ladrones Island is presently known as the Marianas Islands. These islands are located southeast of Japan, southwest of Hawaii, now north of New Guinea, and east of Philippines. 10 days after they reached Ladrones Islands, Pigafetta reported that they reached what Pigafetta called the Isle of Zamar. No summer, but Magellan decided to land in another uninhabited island for greater security where they could rest for a few days. Pigafetta recounted that after 2 days, March 18, nine men came to them and showed joy and eagerness in seeing them. Magellan realized that the men were reasonable and welcomed them with food, drinks, and gifts. In turn, the natives gave them fish, palm wine or yuraka, figs, and 2 cocos. The natives also gave them rice or umay, cocos, and other food supplies. Pigafetta detailed in amazement and fascination the palm tree which bore fruits called cocoa and wine. Amazed, he also described what seemed like a coconut. His description reads, "This palm produced a fruit named cocoa, which is as large as the head, or thereabouts. Its first husk is green, and 2 fingers in thickness. In it they find certain threads, with which they make the cords for fastening the wine, and make it with a powder which is useful to them. Under this wine there is a white mass of a finger's thickness, which they eat fresh with meat and fish, as we do bread, and it has the taste of an almond, and if anyone dried it, he might make bread of it."
Pigafetta characterized the people as very familiar and friendly, really. He showed them different islands and the names of these islands. The fleet went to Humunu Island or Humanhon, and there they found Wu Pigafetta, referred to as the watering place of good signs. It is in the place where Pigafetta wrote that they found the first signs of gold in the island. They named the island with the nearby islands as the archipelago of St. Lazarus. They left the island, then on March 25th, Pigafetta recounted they saw 2 balangay or balangay, a long boat full of people in Mazaba, Mazawa. The leader whom Pigafetta referred to as the king of the balangay or balangay sent his men to the ship of Magellan. The Europeans entertained these men and gave them gifts. When the king of the Balangay offered to Jean Magellan a bar of gold and a chest of ginger, Magellan declined. Magellan sent the interpreter to the king and asked for money for the needs of his ships, and expressed that he came into the islands as a friend and not an enemy. The king responded by giving Magellan the needed provisions of food in Chinawari. Magellan exchanged gifts of robes in Turkish fashion, red cap, and gave the people knives and mirrors. The two then expressed their desire to become brothers. Magellan also boasted of his men in armor who could not be struck with swords and daggers. The king was fascinated and remarked that men in such armor could be worth 100 of his men. Magellan further showed the king his other weapons, helmets, and artilleries. Magellan also shared with the king his charts and maps, and shared how they found the islands. After a few days, Magellan was introduced to the king's brother, who was also a king of another island. They went to this island, and Pigafetta reported that they saw mines of gold. The gold was abundant, that part of the ship and of the house of the second king were made of gold. Pigafetta described this king as the most handsome of all the men that he saw in this place. He was also adorned with silk and gold accessories like a golden dagger, which he carried with him a wooden polished sheet. This king was named Raya Kalambu, king of Zuluan and Calagan, or Butuan and Caragua. And the first king was Raya Shago on March 31st, which happened to be Easter Sunday. Magellan ordered the chaplain to preside the mass by the shore. The king heard of this plan and sent 2 dead pigs and attended the mass with the other king. Pigafetta reported that both kings participated in the mass, he wrote. When the offertory of the mass came, the 2 kings went to kiss the cross like us, but they offered nothing. And at the elevation of the body of our Lord, they were kneeling like us and adored our Lord with joined hands.
After the Mass, Magellan ordered that the cross be brought with nails and crown in place. Magellan explained that the cross, the nail, and the crown were the sign of his emperor, and that he was ordered to plant it in the place that he would reach. Magellan further explained that the cross would be beneficial for their people, because once other Spaniards saw this cross, then they would know that they had been in this island and would not cause them troubles. And any person who might held captives by them would be released. The king concurred and allowed for the cross to be planted. This mass would go down in history as the first mass in the Philippines, and the cross would be the fame Magellan still preserve it at the present day. And did you know A sign below the foot of the cross can be seen describing that the original cross is encased inside another cross made of tindalo wood. The wooden case is placed to protect the original cross from people who chip away parts of the cross and take them as souvenirs, as it was believed to possess miraculous power. After 7 days, Magellan and his men decided to move and look for islands where they could acquire more supplies and provisions. They learned of the islands of Ceylon or Leyte, Bohol, and Zubu or Cebu, and intended to go there. Ria Colombo offered to pilot them in going to Cebu, the largest and the richest of the islands, by April 7th at the same year. Magellan and his men reached the port of Cebu. The king of Cebu thought Magellan's interpreter demanded that they pay a tribute as it was customary, but Magellan refused. Magellan said that he was a captain of a king himself and thus would not pay tribute to other kings. Magellan interpreter explained to the king of Cebu that Magellan's king was the emperor of a great empire and that it would do them better to make friends with them than to forge enmity. The king of Cebu consulted his council. By the next day, Magellan's men and the king of Cebu, together with other principal men of Cebu, met in open space. There, the king offered a bit of his blood and demanded that Magellan do the same. Pigafetta recounts, then the king said that he was content, and as a great sign of affection, he sent him a little of his blood from his right arm in which he should do like. Our people answered that he would do it. Besides that, he said that all the captains who came to his country had been accustomed to make present to him, and he to them, and therefore they should ask their captain if he would observe the custom. Our people answered that he would, but as the king wished to keep up the custom, let him begin and make a present, and then the captain would do his duty.
The following day, Magellan spoke before the people of Cebu about tea and God. Pigafetta reported that the people took pleasure in Magellan's speech. Magellan then asked the people who would succeed the king of his reign, and the people responded that the eldest child of the king, his happened to be a daughter, would be next in the line. Pigafetta also relate how the people talk about how at the old age parents would no longer take into account and had the following the orders of their children as the new leader of the land. Magellan responded by this saying that his faith entitled children to be with honor and obedience to their parents. Magellan preached about their faith further and people were reported convenience. Pigafetta wrote that their men were overjoyed seeing that the people wished to be Christians through their free will and not because were their forced or intimated. On the 40th of April, the people gathered with the king and other principal men of the islands. Magellan spoke to be king and encouraged him to be a good Christian by burning all the idols and worship the cross instead. The king of Cebu was then baptized as a Christian. Pigafetta wrote to be a king, and his whole people answered that they would obey the command of the captain and do all that he told them. The captain took the king by the hand and they walked about Jevan to the moor. He gave the name of Christopher and to be others with the name of his fancy. After eight days, Pigafetta counted that all of the island inhabitants were all already baptized, and he admitted that they born in the village down for obeying neither the king nor Magellan. The mass was conducted by the shore every day. When the queen was carrying mass one day, Magellan gave her an image of infant Jesus made by Pigafetta himself. The king of Cebu swore that he would always be faithful to Magellan. And Magellan reiterated that all of the newly baptized Christians need to burn their idols. but the natives gives excuses, telling Magellan that they needed an idol to heal a sick man who was related to the king. Magellan insisted that should instead put their faith in Jesus Christ. They went to sick man and baptized him. After baptismal, Pigafetta recorded that the man was able to speak again. He was called this miracle.
On the 26th of April, Zola, a principal man from the island of Matan, went to see Magellan and asked him for a boat full of men so that he would be able to fight the chief named Silapalago. Such chief, according to Zola, refused to obey the king and was also preventing him from doing so. Magellan offered 3 boats instead and expressed his desire to go to Mactan himself to fight the said chief. Magellan's forces arrived in Mactan in daylight. They numbered 49 in total, and the islanders of Mactan were estimated to number 1,500. The battle began. Pigafetta recounted. When we reached land, we found the islanders 1,500 in number. With terrible shouts, 2 squadrons attacking on the island on the flanks. And the musketeers and crossbowmen fired for half an hour from a distance but did nothing, since the bullets and arrows, though they passed through their shells made of tin wooden, and perhaps wounded their arms, yet did not stop them. The captain shouted not to fire, but he was not listened to. The islanders, seeing that the shots of our guns did them little, or no harm, would not retire, but shouted more loudly, and springing from one side to the other to avoid their shots, they at the same time drew nearer to us, throwing arrows, javelins, spearheaded in fire, stones, and even mud, so that we could hardly defend. Magellan died in the battle. The natives, perceiving that the bodies of the enemies were protected with armors, aimed for the legs instead. Magellan was pierced with a poisoned arrow in his right leg. A few of their men charged at the natives and tried to intimidate them by boarding an entire village, but this only enraged the natives. Further, Magellan was specifically targeted because the natives know that he was the Captain General. Magellan was hit with lance in the face. Magellan retaliated and first the same native with his lance in the breast, and tried to draw his sword but could not lift it because of his wounded arm. Seeing that the captain was already deteriorated, more natives came to attack him. One native with a great sword delivered a blow in Magellan's left leg, brought him face down. The natives ceaselessly attacked Magellan with lances, sword, and even with their bare hands. Pigafetta recounted the last moment of Magellan. Whilst the Indians were thus overpowering him, several times he turned round towards us to see if we were all in safety. As though his obstinate fight had no other object than to give an opportunity for the retreat of his men.
Pigafetta also said that the king of Cebu, who was baptized, could have sent help, but Magellan instructed him not to join the battle and stay in the barangay so that he would see how they fought. The king offered the people of Mactan gifts of any value and amount in exchange of Magellan's body, but the chief refused. They wanted to keep Magellan's body as a memento of their victory. Magellan's men elected Duarte Barbosa as the new captain. He was Ferdinand Magellan's brother-in-law. Pigafetta also told how Magellan's slave, an interpreter named Henry, betrayed them and told the king of Cebu that they intended to leave as quickly as possible. Pigafetta alleged that the slave told the king that if he followed the slave's advice, then the king could acquire the ships and the goods of Magellan's fleet. The two conspired and betrayed what was felt like of Magellan's. It was only a short time when they heard cries and lamentations. The natives had slain all the men except the interpreter and Juan Serrano, who was already wounded. Serrano was presented and shouted at the men in the ship, asking them to pay for ransom so he would be spared. However, they refused and would not allow anyone to go to the shore. The fleet departed and abandoned Serrano. They left Cebu and continued their journey around the world.
Antonio Pigafetta's chronicle of Magellan's expedition is more than a simple record of events. It is a window into the early encounters between Europeans and the peoples of the Philippine Islands. His account, written with the curiosity of a traveler and the loyalty of a companion to Magellan, reveals both the riches of our pre-colonial society and the European perspective that shaped the way these events were remembered. First, Pigafetta's narrative has immense historical value. Through his detailed descriptions, we gain insights into the everyday life and customs of the early Filipinos. His observations of the coconut tree, palm wine, gold trade, and the balanghay boats provide us with a vivid picture of a society that was already organized, resourceful, and engaged in regional trade long before colonization. He also preserved significant events such as the first record mass in the Philippines, the baptism of Cebu's rulers, and the Battle of Mactan, all of which became turning points in our nation's history.
His writings also highlight the complexity of cultural encounters during the Age of Exploration. Pigafetta recorded how local leaders such as Raha Humabon and Raha Siago welcomed Magellan with gifts, food, and alliances. At the same time, he documented moments of resistance, most notably the defiance of Lapu-Lapu in Mactan. These contrasting responses show that the arrival of the Spaniards was not simply a story of conquest, but also one of negotiation, adaptation, and opposition.
However, it is important to recognize that Pigafetta's perspective was shaped by the European background. He often described the natives with admiration for their generosity and ingenuity. Yet, he also portrayed them through a colonial lens, sometimes calling them poor or primitive despite evidence of health and sophistication. He emphasized the conversation, baptism, and the destruction of idols reflect the missionary mindset of Europe during the 16th century, where religions and empire work hand to hand to expand influence.
At the same time, Pigafetta's portrayal of Magellan is deeply sympathetic. He constantly emphasized the captain's bravery and leadership, especially in the Battle of Mactan, while understandable given Pigafetta's loyalty. Also reminds us that his account is not neutral. Like any primary source, it carries the biases, loyalties, and assumption of its author.
Despite these limitations, Pigafetta's chronicle remains one of the most important sources for understanding the pre-colonial Philippines. It is one of the earliest written records that detail how our ancestors lived, what they valued, and how they interacted with foreign powers. More than just the story of Magellan's voyage, it is also the story of our people, their hospitality, their diplomacy, their faith, and their resistance. In the end, Pigafetta's account teaches us two lessons. The first is that, but also through the eyes of those who witnessed them. The second is that history must always be read critically. We must appreciate its details while remaining aware of the perspectives and biases that shaped it. By doing so, we can better understand both the world that Pigafetta described and the enduring spirit of the Filipinos who live